Yo, what's up guys? This is Theo here, and in this video I'm going to start with lesson 1 of YouTube API, so learn how to use the YouTube API. Thought it'd be fitting because I have a YouTube channel. Basically an API is an application programming interface. An interface is basically just a contract, so what this boils down to is you're programming or you're requesting data from a certain source that as long as you abide by its contract, in terms of what you request from it, it's going to give you an appropriate response. And it doesn't matter what language it's written in, you're still going to have access to that data through what's called JSON or XML, and JSON is JavaScript object notation. So let's go ahead and try it out. I'm going to go back to, this is 19, so we might break this up into part 2. So the first one, it says, what is HTTP? So this stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Is a transfer protocol of saying rules for getting something from one place to another. So let's look at this. This is saying var XHR, which stands for XML hyper transfer protocol request, is equal to a new XML HTTP request. More commonly used is actually JSON, but this is just what stuck because that's what was used in the past. Then it's making a call to this open method on this object, and this takes in 3 parameters. First, it takes in the sort of the verb, and this is a get request, which means we're getting some data. Here's the URL, and the second, or this third parameter, I'd have to look it up exactly, but I'm pretty sure this just means you want this code to be run synchronously, which means you don't want it to wait for anything. Then you click send, and what will happen behind the scenes is this request will actually fire off, and actually after here you'll look at the status. This should be at 200 if everything went okay, and the status text. So let's go ahead and save and submit this code. We just get an OK. Awesome. Next up, guys, what we want to do is this is how, just look at this code, and this is how clients and servers interact on the internet. So it says one server can handle many requests from several clients at once. So basically you can think of the server as sort of like a bank teller, or maybe not a bank teller, but like say a restaurant where you go and you take a ticket, right? So they're able to serve many people by sort of delegating out that ticket system, and that doesn't, like the typical line, that doesn't, maybe not so much anymore, but that doesn't necessarily hold them up, and it makes it more efficient because you can get your ticket and then someone else can order. So cool. Next up, what we want to do is set the answer variable in the editor to the letter associated with the best guess. So you, the client, make an HTTP request. What sends the response? So is it the internet? Nope. Is it the World Wide Web? Nope. It's the server. So the server is serving the client. Awesome. And obviously I think we want to make this a string. C. Cool. Next up, guys, check out the code in the editor. This is an example of the kind of information we get back from an API. So this is what I was talking about. When you make a request, and so in this case it would be my blog, whatever site this is hosted on, or whatever endpoint, this is what's going to come back, this object, right? Because everything in JavaScript is ultimately an object. And so it has this key and all these values, and then you can just, parse it like you would a normal JavaScript object and get the sort of keys you want. Next up, guys, we want to make a request. So as I explained before, we sort of hacked into this new object, or went into this new object we called the open method. Now we need to call send to actually fire off our request. And finally, let's log out the XHR status. Because this is synchronous, we should be able to see this. And let's log out xhr.statusText. So if all goes well, what we should see is a 200 and OK. Cool. Next up, so we can look at the 4 verbs. I mentioned get, but there's also post to send information, put to update, and delete to remove information. So let's move on. Alright, next up, so like I said before, there's the request and the header, and then the body, which is where you would send your information if you're making a post request. And when you're doing a GET request, this is what you'll parse to look for the information. So post, right? Um, this is the host, which is what you're posting to. Content type, this is what kind of data you expect. And this is the body. Awesome. Let's move on. I think we'll just go to 10, and then we'll do the next one later. So endpoints are API-defined locations where data is stored. So an endpoint is basically just a sort of like a checkpoint where the data is held. It's where it's serviced. Um, so let's see. Let me reset this. What are the four most commonly used HTTP method verbs? So that's going to be get, post, put, and delete. So let's put in D here. Awesome. And let's reset this. So there's also API keys. So what this is say there's a public API, right? But you're just sending them overloads of requests and you're just taking up a lot of resources from their server. Maybe they don't want that, especially if it's some sort of authentication service or some valuable resource and a lot of people are using it. So they want to sort of have some sort of limitation on who gets access to these resources and how often. So a lot of times you have to make an account on their website, say like, the weather API, that's a good example. And you have to put this key in there, and on their back end, they have not exactly sure, what their logic might be, but it definitely checks for this API key, which somewhat looks like a hash, but not really. And that is used to authenticate your request. But even then, you still have a limited amount of requests. Awesome. So we'll do one more. And what we want to do is, says we've sent a GET request to a CodeCademy page that doesn't exist. Call status on XHR and console log this value so you can see the status code. So let's see. Let's console.log xhr.status. And because this is going to be not found, the status code should be 404. Awesome. So that's it, guys, for part one of understanding how to use the YouTube API. Next time, we'll hopefully get into some more exciting stuff. But just wanted to bring that tutorial for you guys. And if you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, like, comment, and please subscribe and support the channel. Thanks a lot. See you in the next video. Take care.